Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back to Daily Devotions. Today we are in the book of Acts, chapter 27. So before we get into verse 1, let's do a little overview, kind of what I'm going to try to be pointing out in this chapter. Now, as an inmate on a virtual prison ship, which is where Paul is right now, Paul began with no influence. By the end of the voyage, however, we find that everyone's listening to him, including the centurion in charge of the ship, which will benefit him later on. So today we're going to follow his path and show how he gained influence on this ship that will ultimately impact his life and how it'll impact his life. So let's go. Verse 1. And when it was determined that we should sail into Italy, they delivered Paul and certain other prisoners unto one named Julius, a centurion of Augustus' band, and entered into a ship of Acremidum. We launched, meaning to sail by the coast of Asia, one Aristotish, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, being with us. And the next day we touched at Sidon, and Julius courteously entreated Paul and gave him liberty to go into his friends to refresh himself. He built trust. Julius allowed Paul special privileges, noting his trustworthy. He let Paul off the ship, go visit his friends, and come back. And so he built some trust there. And whenever he launched from thence, we sailed to Cyprus because the winds were contrary. And whenever we had sailed over the sea of Sicilia and Pamphylia, we came into Myra, the city of Lycia. And there the centurion found a ship of Alexander sailing into Italy and put us on that one. So we changed ships here. And whenever we had sailed slowly many days and scarce were come over against Sidus, the wind not suffering us, we sailed under Crete and against Salome, and hardly pressing it, came into a place which is called the Fair Heavens, nigh whereunto was the city of Laius. Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them and said to them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage, not only with the lading of ship, but also our lives. Saying, guys, this is not good sailing here. We need to lay off. He took initiative and possessed good judgment. With no position, with no permission, Paul stepped in and acted and said what he believed. His speech revealed, number one, wisdom, and number two, experience. But here's the thing. The centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those which were spoken by Paul. And because the haven was not yet commodious to winter in, the more part advised to depart thence also, if by any means they might attain to Phenice and there to winter. So it's like, oh, we can get to the next town, it's going to be fine, which is a haven at Crete and lieth toward the south and west and the northwest, excuse me. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing that they had obtained their purpose, losing thence, they sailed close to Crete. But not long after, there arose another tempest wind called Euroclydon. And when the ship was caught and could not bear into the wind, we let her dive. And running under a certain island, which is called Claudius, we had much work to come by the boat, which when they had taken up, they used heaves, undergirded the ship, and fearing lest they should fall into quicksand, strike sails, and so driven. So the ship is in the middle of a storm. They're trying to save the ship and being exceedingly tossed by the tempest. The next day, we lightened the ship. They begin to throw things overboard. Now, sometimes whenever you're in the middle of a storm, you need to lighten the ship. There may be some things in your life. You might be in a storm right now, and you need to lighten the ship a little bit. And on the third day, we cast out with our hands and tackling the ship. And whenever we had neither sun nor stars, and the days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was then taken away. Everybody lost hope. But after long abstinence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them and said, Sirs, you should have hearkened unto me. Hey, you should have listened. And we would have not loosened from Crete and would have gained this harm and loss. So he spoke with authority and credibility. Paul unashamedly reminded the crew that he had been right earlier, and if they would have listened, they would have been in this predicament. But we are in this predicament, and now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you but the ship. Paul said, we're not going to lose anybody, we're just going to lose the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God, whose I am and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar, and lo, God hath given thee all of them that sail with thee. He was optimistic, he was confident, he spoke with boldness. Wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God that it shall be as it was told me. He gave encouragement. Paul gave hope for survival and for rescue. Howbeit, we must be cast upon a certain island. He was honest. Paul candidly told the crew they would face a problem, but here's the thing. God's already told me you're all going to be okay, and we have to be cast on a certain island. It's coming. But when the 14th night was come, and we were driven up and down in Adria, about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they were drew nigh to some country, and sounded and found it 20 fathoms, and whatever, which is a measurement. And when they had gone a little bit further, they sounded again and found it 15 fathoms. When fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. And as the shipmen were about to flee of the ship, when they had let down the boat of the sea, under color they thought they would have cast anchors out of the foreship. Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, except these abide the ship, you cannot be saved. Then the soldier cut off the rope of the boat and let her fall off. He didn't compromise on absolutes. Paul wouldn't drift from the God-given instructions. Hey, lose the ship, save the people. Lose the ship, save the people. Stop trying to save the ship. Lose the ship, save the people. And while the day was coming, Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, this day is the 14th day, that you have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. Wherefore I pray to you that you take some meat, for this is your health, for there shall not a hair fall from your head any of this day. So he stayed focused on the objective, not on the obstacles. And when he had thus spoke, he took bread and gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And whenever he broke it, he began to eat. And then there were all of good cheer, and they all took some meat, some food. And we were all in the ship, 216 souls. And whenever they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat of the ship. So he led by example. Paul led by modeling the right attitude. They ate, they lightened the ship, and they cast all the wheat out of the ship. And whenever it was day, they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with the shore, into the which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. And whenever they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves to the sea and loosened the rudder bands and hoisted the mainsail of the wind and made toward ship. After and falling into a place where the two seas met, they ran the ship around, and the foresail struck fast and remained unmovable, the hinder part broken into the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim and escape. But the centurion, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they could swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get to land. The rest, some on boards, some on broken pieces of the ship, and so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. He ultimately succeeded. He eventually accomplished what he set out to do: lose the ship, save the men. Everyone was safe. Some swam, some on boards, some floated on rafts, on pieces of board that they found. He successfully accomplished the mission that he set out to do. So that's kind of what Paul had. He had influence. At the beginning, they weren't listening to him. At the end, they began to listen to him because he knew what he was doing, and they all listened to him. What can you do to have influence in someone's life today? That's a question that you're going to have to ask yourself. What are you seeking? How are you going to make somebody's life better today? Make someone's life better, and they'll give you permission to lead them. God bless. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.